Hello and welcome to our COVID-19 vaccine special Sanjeevani, a shot of life. I'm Shireen Bhan. India is all set to roll out its vaccination drive against the deadly coronavirus that has killed nearly 1.5 lakh Indians in less than a year. The subject expert committee is reviewing applications for emergency use authorization of 3 vaccine candidates. These include Serum Institute's Covishield, which is the vaccine developed by Oxford University and AstraZeneca, Bharat Biotech's indigenous vaccine candidate, and Pfizer and BioNTech's vaccine, which has already been cleared by the UK, the US and now the WHO. But as we await the green light, the government has accelerated its vaccine rollout efforts. Sources say over 70 lakh healthcare workers have registered on the CoWIN platform. These are the beneficiaries in phase 1. Around 2.5 lakh vaccinators and over 51,000 public health facilities have been identified for the drive. The centre has also asked states to identify specific days when they want to conduct the vaccination. Meanwhile, all states and union territories are set to conduct a dry run tomorrow. The nationwide drill is to test the mechanisms and reveal possible gaps in the system ahead of the actual exercise. Union Health Minister Harsh Vardhan has said all hands are on deck and that preparations are on at a war footing. Take a look.
बहुत सारे विषय हैं जिनको हम लोग चाहते थे कि ये सब चीज़ों को समय से पहले भी सब लोग खुद अपनी सेल्फ ऑडिटिंग ऑफ देयर ओन प्रिपरेशंस करें और यहाँ पर हम लोग अपना सारे देश के साथ कोऑर्डिनेट कर रहे हैं। सारी तैयारियां चल रही हैं जो कि पिछले कुछ महीने से, जिसमें कि सारे हमारे जो हेल्थ वर्कर्स हैं पब्लिक सेक्टर में, प्राइवेट सेक्टर में, हमारे हॉस्पिटल्स और दूसरे हेल्थ फैसिलिटीज़ में हमारे फ्रंटलाइन वर्कर्स हैं, उनकी सबकी लिस्टें बनाने का काम।
स्वास्थ्य मंत्रालय भारत सरकार की तरफ से ड्राई रन का नियोजन भारत देश में ही हो रहा है। हमारे महाराष्ट्र में भी नियोजन करने का उनका जो सुझाव है उसके बारे में हमारे स्वास्थ्य मंत्रालय ने 4 जिलों का यानी उनका चुनाव किया है और ख़ास तौर पर पूना, नंदुरबार, जालना एंड नागपुर, ये 4 जिलों में हम इसके बारे में ड्राई रन करने जा रहे हैं।
From 300 million syringes per annum, which is required for UAP, the demand is expected to go up by an additional 600 million pieces by June and September next year. So that means around 900 million pieces are required. And the government has placed orders on HMD for 177 million pieces that we have to supply by March. And we expect additional orders to come in for March to September period going forward.
Well, some of the highlights there on the dry run, which kicks off nationwide tomorrow, as well as the procurement for syringes. To take the discussion forward, we're now joined by Dr. Vinod Paul, head of the National COVID-19 Task Force, also a member of the Niti Aayog. Dr. Paul, many thanks for joining us here on CNBC TV 18. To start with, here's wishing you and your team a very happy New Year from all of us at CNBC TV 18. Sir, if I could ask you about when we should realistically expect the inoculation plan, the rollout to kick off. We've heard from the Prime Minister, we've heard from the drug regulator saying that they expect clearances very shortly. But when should we realistically now expect the vaccination drive to start?
Well, I think the main time limiting issue is the licensure. Once the licensure is provided by the regulator, the rest of the activity then starts to unfold, and for which, as you have very nicely articulated in the feature today, a whole lot of preparation, comprehensive readiness is already instituted throughout the country. So in a way, there is optimum preparedness in the states. The plans are ready. Once the licensure is taken, in a matter of a few days, surely the first phase and the immediate phase of the vaccination will roll out.
Okay, we are still awaiting the licensure clearance from the regulator, and perhaps today at the meeting of the subject expert committee, a recommendation will be made for at least one of those vaccine candidates, if not all. I'll get to the specifics in just a second, but let's talk about the AstraZeneca Oxford University vaccine that is being manufactured by Serum Institute in India. The company has made it clear that by the first week of January, they will be able to make available 100 million doses. But so far, there has been no agreement inked between the government and Serum Institute. Is the government awaiting the licensure to sign that agreement? Because in other parts of the world, we saw advance purchase agreements being inked so that the stockpiling was in order. Here, the stockpile is already ready, manufactured at risk, but the government has not inked an agreement yet. Why is that the case, sir?
Remember, we are working as one team in India. The industry, the government and other stakeholders, in particular our science organizations and the implementation arms of the government are working in sync with each other. We are aware of the developments that are taking place in terms of stockpiling by the various companies. We talk on a daily basis and therefore the stockpile that is being referred to being available in this month for potential rollout is a significant development. The formal agreements will follow, formal procurement will follow, formal system of working together and will follow. But that does not hold us back from creating an understanding as to how this whole process will roll out. We are on the same page with the industry.
Okay, you're saying that you're saying you're on the same page with industry and that a formal procurement agreement will be inked shortly. That will not hold back the government from distributing the vaccine. Can you help us understand what the process is going to be once the regulator gives the go-ahead, gives the approval? What should we then expect as far as the agreement with the government and a company like Serum Institute is concerned? What kind of timelines are we looking at, sir?
Well, you know that, you know that the country has decided that we will pitch for covering 300 million individuals based on a prioritization process, which is now in the public domain. So once a licensure is provided, and we know that stockpiles are available with the companies, more than one company has a stockpile potentially. And this will be then taken to the vaccination points through our main hubs, which are about 31 in number. And the vaccine movement takes place. The ready-to-use vaccine is made available at those points. And then it is picked up by the state governments and taken to district and further downstream as required.
Okay, can you explain to us the distribution strategy, Dr. Paul? You said that there will be 31 hubs from where the individual state governments will then pick up and further distribute. Will some states be given priority in terms of the quantum of doses that will be made available? I would imagine this will be linked to the number of cases that those particular states have. And also, there has been no clarity on whether this is going to be provided free of cost or will the cost be borne by the centre and the state or both. Can you shed some light on that as well?
Well, our immediate phase starts with vaccinating the health workers, and you pointed out the fact that 70 lakh healthcare workers have been enrolled into the system. So our immediate phase starts with the healthcare workers in all the states. The soonest possible after a licensure is granted, and those preparations, as I said, are indeed ready in a sense, and that phase can start immediately. At the same time, the other groups that we have prioritized, that work is also in very, very advanced stages of preparedness, and those waves of inoculating the frontline workers as well as those who are now entering the priority list by way of age cutoff would also be instituted. 31 hubs are the main hubs where the delivery of the vaccine takes place, but then eventually it moves to 29,000 vaccination points, and even more if need be, as we move to the more holistic vaccination program covering people in every village, in every nook and corner.
You didn't give me clarity on who bears the costs. Will it be the centre? Will it be the centre and the states? How will this work?
Well, I think you should wait for final decision on this. But the government has always stated that resources, the financial resources, are not a constraint to vaccinate people for COVID-19 disease. And certainly at this point in time, we are looking at the priority group. We are not looking at the entire population, but the priority group of 300 billion, the process is on, and resources are not an issue.
Okay, resources not an issue, but still no clarity on whether it's the centre and the states or just the centre that will bear the cost. But sir, let me also ask you about private use. Companies have already stockpiled. We know, for instance, the kind of stockpiling that's been done by Serum. By when do you anticipate that there will be availability of the vaccine in the private market for private use, non-government purposes?
Remember, Shireen, what we have done now is looking at the vaccination effort as a holistic public health response. And that public health response covers the priority groups, which are a subset of the total population of India. And now this stems from our basic principle that we want to minimize the number of deaths related to COVID-19 disease. And that's why a high-risk group has been chosen. And of course, the people that are involved in pandemic response and providing healthcare to India. Now, this is the first and immediate phase that we are looking at. And here it is a holistic public health response. And what is emerging as a stockpile of vaccine at this point in time, for some period of time, is just about enough to address the needs of this priority group. There is no further immediate vaccine over and above available beyond this number. Now, as we move along, there will be other vaccines coming up. As we move along, the stockpiling capability of the existing company and other companies that are in the front run at this moment will also rise. So at that point in time, the next phase of vaccination would start. Remember, there are multiple goals of vaccination program. First goal, as I said, is to protect, let's say, the people who are most vulnerable. But eventually, we want to ensure that the entire nation has herd immunity so that the transmission of the virus stops. Of course, we are still learning as to how the dynamics of such herd immunity are. We do not know. Globally, we do not know. But then ultimate goal remains, for a vaccination program, remains to stall the transmission chains in its tracks. And that remains a goal, but for that, much larger population may have to be vaccinated. We have to watch how the pandemic pans out, but starting with the most needy individuals on the basis of public health principles.
Yes, so the private market will have to wait as far as the vaccine is concerned. But Dr. Paul, if I may ask you now specifically about each vaccine candidate. Now, let's start with Covishield, which is the Oxford-AstraZeneca vaccine being manufactured by Serum Institute in India. Now, this seems to be the best bet for countries like ours, given the affordability factor, given the accessibility factor, as well as the ready stockpile for use. Do you believe that it's only a matter of time that the licensure will be provided for Covishield, for Serum? And is there any thought on taking forward the same time period, the dosage time period that the UK, for instance, has decided to go in for? Is that the time period that India will follow through on as well?
Well, I think we are definitely at an inflection point or a decision point with regard to the Serum Institute vaccine, namely the Oxford vaccine, namely the Covishield vaccine that you're talking about. Certainly, we are almost there. And today, the subject expert group of the drugs regulator is examining the data. And as you know, MHRA in UK has already licensed. So there must be a lot of information available which enables a decision by a reputed regulator such as the UK regulator. And our group has to look into the data available from other nations, but also the data that has come up from the trial of about 1,600 individuals among the Indian subjects, and that is a specific part additionally that will be looked at by the group. I'm sure we are close to a decision point, but let these processes unfold in a scientific manner, and we leave it to the regulator and their subject expert group to take the final decision. But I do hope that we are quite close to it. Now, since it is the same vaccine that has been licensed in other country and it emanates from the origin in Oxford University, surely, broadly, I expect the guidelines for administration to be same as have been put in the public domain by the UK regulator, by and large. That's what we expect, because it is the same vaccine. However, there could be some nuancing here and there, but for that we should wait the decision of our own science team working with the drug regulator. But yes, indeed, we are quite close to a decision point, that is for sure.
Quite close to a decision point when it comes to Covishield, and in your assessment, likely to follow the same dosing regimen of a 4 to 12-week interval, which is what the UK regulator has approved. But as you rightly pointed out, the regulator will take a final call on this. Let me then talk to you about the Bharat Biotech vaccine candidates. This is the indigenous vaccine. Now, it is currently in phase 3. 13,000 people have been enrolled. We're given to understand that there is an issue with getting enrollment done. The target is 26,500. Would it be appropriate for an EUA to be granted even while phase 3 is underway?
Well, again, I think this should be left to the regulator and the esteemed group of scientists that form the subject expert group. This is in the domain of the regulatory processes, and it is not right for me to speculate on that. But remember, the basis for a vaccine of this nature, which is very, very indigenous Indian vaccine, also has to follow the scientific principles. But there's something interesting about this vaccine is that unlike other vaccines, it does not use the S protein based based reasoning for protection. Which is amenable to change by the UK mutation in particular. So this being a killed vaccine, it's a unique vaccine. You see, different vaccines in COVID-19 disease and SARS-CoV-2 virus are targeting different parts of the virus, and they're using different platforms. It's notable to say that this particular vaccine is based on a very time-tested platform, which is the killed vaccine, that you kill the vaccine. It doesn't, kill the virus. It's a killed virus. It does not cause a disease, but it still excites antibody response. And therefore, this vaccine is of great interest to us. And we know from phase 1, phase 2, that safety and immunogenicity has been shown to be pretty much very evident and very reassuring. We are very proud of this vaccine. In terms of our own development of the vaccine, and the fact that so far it has shown safety parameters have been met, by and large immunogenicity parameters have been met, and we leave it to the regulator to decide the final point as to whether such a license is to be given or we should wait for more results to come. But very promising vaccine indeed.
Okay, so you're saying Bharat Biotech, very promising vaccine, and it's unique as well, operating on a tested platform. But does the approval process, Dr. Paul, allow for emergency approval while the trial phase is still underway? And also, what about the efficacy data that has been submitted by Bharat Biotech? How promising is the efficacy data, sir?
It is not for me to comment on that, because I believe in today's meeting, all the data that has been sought previously would be presented. It's a rolling review. The data is getting accumulated in an ongoing trial for any vaccine on a periodic basis. And I would leave this judgment to the regulator.
Right. Let me then ask you about the third candidate, sir, and that's the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, which has been cleared by both the UK, the US, and now the WHO as well. India did insist on bridge trials being conducted here, but is that something that we could perhaps expect some relaxation? Could a waiver be allowed, given the fact that today the WHO has also cleared Pfizer-BioNTech? Could this be made available in the private market, for instance? Could it be allowed in the private market, for instance, outside of government procurement?
Well, Pfizer vaccine has been now cleared for use in multiple countries. And they have put up an application for authorization in the country. But to my knowledge, they have not yet presented their data. They have not really come to participate in the meeting so far. So we will wait when they are ready to undergo interaction with the expert group. They will take a call. Yes, indeed, it is true that so far any vaccine in India that has been put to public health use into the market has undergone bridging trials because we believe on scientific basis such trials are needed, because immunogenicity and safety shown in different populations may not necessarily be applicable to India, and India has the wherewithal to conduct high quality trial, unlike other nations which accept the results elsewhere. So this has been a norm so far. It is for the regulator to decide whether an exception is to be made or not, but in principle we have, as India, as country, not done that exception so far. But I think again this is to be settled in conversation with the subject expert group once they come and talk about it. But indeed, yes, it's a great vaccine. It's a new platform vaccine, and we know it is rolling out pretty much well. But remember, WHO is an overarching body which, based on the assessments of different regulators, takes a call for their own pre-qualification. Now, that's a different process. It is for the regulator of a nation to decide the scientific validity, and also if there are any country-specific needs over and above a global framework for such licensure.
Right. So that will be a call that the regulator will take on whether the bridge trial should be waived and whether we will see the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine being allowed here in India and the licensure being granted. But Dr. Paul, what would be then the realistic expectation in terms of the number of vaccine candidates that India will have access to? In light of what we've heard from you, as well as what we've been, of course, tracking, it looks like it's largely going to be driven by Serum and Bharat Biotech. Are you feeling confident about adding Sputnik to the arsenal as well?
Well, certainly. You must remember that India is now witnessing at least 6 vaccines in clinical trial phases. And I do hope that all of them, one by one, would be available for India and for also marketing outside India. Other than the 2 that you mentioned, we do know that the Sputnik vaccine is also in phase 2, going phase 3 trial, and that could be the next vaccine to be considered. And the company that is developing this vaccine and conducting trials, along with their own partners, have a significant capacity to ramp up production and build a stockpile. So we hope in 3 to 4 months' time that vaccine, if it is effective, would also be available. Then we have our cadlazitis vaccine, completed phase 2, is moving into phase 3. So maybe 4 months down the line, 3 months down the line, they would be ready with results. And if they are positive, why not? And then there are 2 other vaccines in somewhat earlier phase of trial, the Genova company vaccine and the biological E vaccine. Genova is an RNA platform, and biological E is an RBD, the receptor binding protein domain based vaccine. These 2 are currently in phase 1, going phase 2 trials, and maybe 6 months from now, these vaccines would also be available, if not earlier. So remember, India is very fortunate that we have a very systematic and a comprehensive pipeline available of vaccines belonging to different platforms, because that also gives us diversity and resilience in terms of our vaccine stockpile. and vaccine possibilities, and in some sense, therefore, vaccine security. And that's very heartening for India's enterprise,
Yes.
India's scientific enterprise, as well as the industry.
Right. Dr. Paul, in fact, as we speak, sir, and you did say at the start of the program that you felt confident that we were at an inflection point when it comes to Covishield. You said that a decision was expected shortly. And I'm given to understand, this is, of course, a CNBC TV 18 exclusive news break, that the SEC has recommended in favor of granting the emergency use authorization to Covishield, which is being manufactured in India by Serum Institute. Remember, the SEC can provide a recommendation and the final nod will come in from the regulator. But Dr. Paul, were you anticipating this? And now that the SEC has recommended EUA, sir, how quickly will the regulator sign off?
Well, I'll have to check this information. So I think for the moment, no comment on this from me. As I said, we were close to a decision point, but I like to wait for the actual formulation of the decision. But it's, if it has happened, it's a great day. Happy New Year.
Yes, it certainly is a great start to the year. This is source-based information that we're getting, that the subject expert committee has decided to recommend the emergency use authorization for Serum Institute's Covishield. Remember, the final approval will come in from the drug regulator. Sir, before I let you go, what could be the expected timeline by when you hope to complete phase 1, which is when the healthcare workers will be administered the vaccine? When do you hope to start the priority groups being vaccinated? If you can give us some broad timelines, Dr. Paul, before we let you go.
Well, as I said, that these three subcategories of the first wave of vaccinees or priority groups, we'll begin with healthcare workers. We will then also start with the frontline workers, and then also very quickly, as the momentum builds up and as the vaccines supply chain starts to move, the third group would be added. And at any given time, eventually, perhaps all the three waves would be moving together, one after the other. I think it's a bit premature for me to say when the first one would add the second one. But certainly, I think our commitment is at the earliest. It should be possible. But give us a little time, because in the early phase, there will be some streamlining issues. It may not be fair for me to say exactly when we do it, but certainly, remember, we are not going to cover the last health worker before we go to frontline worker, and cover the last frontline worker before we go to the general public in terms of people more than 50. We are beginning, and as the stockpile is becoming available, the vaccine supplies are getting systematized, the next wave and the next wave would come, because we have the capacity to institute a very large, very big program in terms of number of people that you can vaccinate on a given day, because it's a vast nation, it's a large population, but we also have large capacities to do so, and we have been doing it for our universal immunization program. We have been doing it for election kind of an endeavor. So on the ground, it is a single unit, single booth where 100 people come in a systematic way and take their vaccine. There's another unit where the same thing happens for another 100. So it's a matter of building it up in a safe way, in a systematic way, in a smooth way, in a glitch-free way. And that phase is therefore very important for us to go through. And once that system is moving, the escalation would be relatively fast.
Dr. Paul, it's been a pleasure, sir. Thank you very much for joining us and sharing with us details of the vaccination drive. We appreciate the clarity that you've been able to provide us. With that, it is time for us to wrap up this CNBC TV 18 special broadcast. From all of us here, many thanks for watching. And once again, here's wishing all our viewers a very happy New Year.